had her official title on here, and it just disappeared. And you know me, where's Lisa? Come forward. I hope the sun stays out of the lens. But you always need a young person, you know, in one of these things. Don't leave. Don't leave. Okay. Look at, don't we look alike? We're only a few years apart. So, and as I'm just introducing her, where's her mom? Sue. Over there. Come a little bit forward. Jimson she is my first cousin, and I'm very proud. I mean, we all fall in line of education, and Lisa Fludd-Smith, and where's her husband? Would you raise your hand? There he is. Okay. He's an executive deputy director of the African American Archives of Columbia County. Can you imagine that at her age? They can do anything. Her age isn't that young. She's a lay historian and a researcher, and she's a scholar. She's curious. She's probably nosy like I am, but that's what you do when you get curious about things. You just jump head over heels in it and hope you land on your feet. If not, somebody will pick you up. And when they pick you up, they gotta pick you up like this, right? It's contagious. It's contagious. So Lisa's keenly aware of the educational value. A little bit. Yep. She wanted to take charge, but she got to get older than that. Educational value and the cultural observation. And I like this because it's so scholarly and so disciplined. I gotta read this. As such, she's created a website and a blog to chronicle the lives of her Black ancestors in Columbia County, New York, and is presently writing a book on the history of slavery and freedom in the area. Mrs. Fludd-Smith holds a BA in Communications Media Studies from the New School for Social Research, and she's the owner of a furniture restoration business. Yay. Watch out for cars. Back away,
Good.
back away. Husband and 3 adult children, and they're all very, very smart children, beautiful children. So I want to, I don't know, are you going to speak now, or will you speak out of the way and all that? Okay. I'll speak. Okay, she don't even have, she got a little
I know a speech.
So you're saying
I had to write
from the
something
family
down.
curse.
Thank you, Cousin Gloria. You guys can come in closer. Don't stand so far away. All right. So I want to thank you all. Thank you, Pastor Linda, for inviting me, Pastor Singletary, for having me here. It's an honor to have the opportunity to share with you all some of the history of this sacred ground. This small lot where we are holds special significance to me personally, as it does to several of us out here, because it's the resting place of my own ancestors. The very roots of my being are here. Juneteenth is an auspicious day for us to be here and for us to honor the ancestors. It's an important holiday for us as Americans, and particularly as Black Americans, but we're also New Yorkers. And if you think about it from the perspective of being from New York, there's another date that we have to commemorate, which is July 5th. Because it was on July 5th, 1827, that slavery officially ended in New York State. Our state began the very, very complicated process of gradual manumission in 1799 with what was called the Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery. This act stipulated that any enslaved person born before 1799 would remain enslaved for the rest of their lives, and that anyone born after 1799 would become a free and voluntary servant to the owner of their mother. Later, they would stay a free and voluntary servant until the age of 25 if they were a woman, or 28 if they were a man. Later in 1817, the act relative to slaves and servants was passed, which allowed any enslaved person born before 1799 to be a free, effective July 5th, 1827. Anyone born between 1799 and 1817 would remain free servants until that age of 25 or 28. And those born between 1817 and 1827 would be free servants until the age of 21. New York did not do anything easy to make it as complicated as it possibly can be. So our Emancipation Day, the day we celebrate in New York, came nearly 4 decades before the first Juneteenth. But even though slavery had ended officially, let's not forget about those free and voluntary servants. They still had to serve out the remainder of their time, even after 1827, which meant that it wasn't until about 1845 when the last slaves were free in New York State. So, take a minute and think about this. Imagine you're a parent. You were born in 1797, right? So before 1799, before all that happened, you were born and you assumed you would be enslaved for the rest of your life. And imagine that you had 3 sons, right? So you had a son born in 1816, and another one born in 1825, and another one born in 1828. Your oldest son would essentially be enslaved. He'd be a free, involuntary servant until he turned 28 in 1844. The son born in 1825 would be enslaved until he reached the age of 21. But your youngest son would be born a free black person. You yourself would have gone through a 30-year transition from being enslaved for life to suddenly at the age of 30 being a free person. So that's how convoluted the lives of black people were in this area in 1815 when this lot of land was set aside to become a cemetery. It was set aside by a man named John Rogers. So who was John Rogers, and how did he come to give us a piece of land in which to bury our ancestors? Rogers was an Irish immigrant. He came to Kinderhook around 1793, and around 1807 he purchased the house and land on the corner of Rothermel or Broad Street. So if you go out this street and go out to the corner of Broad Street, you'll see a big brick federal-style house. That was his house. Okay. That large brick house was built in 1774 by David Van Schaack, although around here it's more commonly known as either the Vanderpoel House after a later owner named Aaron Vanderpoel, or it's called the Burgoyne House because the famous British general, Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, was entertained there when he was a prisoner of war after the Battle of Saratoga in the Revolutionary War. In that house, over the years, many enslaved people lived there, including those owned by David Van Schaack and those owned by Rogers himself. That's my phone going off. The back wing of that home, if you look around the back side, added in 1820 by Vanderpoel, was built to house a new kitchen and additional living quarters for the enslaved members of that household. Rogers, we know, owned at least one slave, a man named Harry, who was to be set free upon Rogers' death. His 1815 will states that it is, quote, his will and pleasure that my Negro boy, Harry, be set free upon my decease. And his executors were to, quote, convey to the elders of the church of the town of Kinderhook.
Another car's coming. We need to move forward.
Come in closer.
This way, this way. Yeah, it's easier for them to drive.
Everybody's on one side.
Right, yeah.
This is all around. If everybody's on one side. Thank you. Thank you.
United we stand.
exactly. There probably hasn't been as big a group of people here since the last burial, which is kind of a special thing. So anyway, his executors were to, quote, convey to the elders of the church of the town of Kinderhook, that's the Dutch Reformed Church, and their successors, one rood of land in some convenient part of the third lot from the street, Broad Street, for the people of for a cemetery for the people of color in the said town of Kinderhook, to be used for that purpose and none other. You can see that on the sign, to be used for that purpose and none other. And for those of you who are not up on your colonial era units of measure, a rood is about 1/4 of an acre. At the time of Roger's death, most of the black community, probably all of the black community here, was still enslaved. And we, to be honest, have no idea why he had such feelings about the black community, or what made him decide to set aside a part of his property in which for us to be buried. And as far as I know, there are no surviving records of this bequest with the Dutch Reformed Church. If y'all are familiar with the Edward Collier book, The History of Kinderhook, Edward Collier was a minister of the Dutch Reformed Church and a historian, and in the book he writes, quote, while the Vanderpoel place was owned by the somewhat erratic John Rogers, he set apart a portion of his land for the free burial of our colored people. It was thus used until every available inch was taken up. In some cases, it is stated, with coffin placed upon coffin. It was then, as it now long has been, closed against additional burials. And with those few words, Collier gives us the most extensive contemporary details that we have about the cemetery. Based on this information, we can see that the cemetery was in use from about 1816 to sometime before 1900. And we know that virtually every inch of this lot contains the remains of Kinderhook's black population. And also just keep in mind that when we say Kinderhook now, we're not talking about the little village here, because the town of Kinderhook was much bigger then. It included parts of Chatham and parts of Ghent and Claverack, and so it's a larger community than what we see right here. It is estimated that there may be as many as 500 of our ancestors in this lot. And I know I've learned that when they tried to determine the place for this sign, they found that the grave shafts go up to less than a foot beneath the soil. So it's a lot of people. After its closure, the cemetery was largely forgotten. In the 1950s, when the Rothermel family owned this land and deeded these 5 acres to the town for the park and the ball field, it was only mentioned in passing. In the 1970s, a local Boy Scout troop cleared the overgrowth, and in the 90s, the village began mowing and maintaining the space. And about, I think, 15 years ago, locals Hollis Seaman and Warren Applegate set about having the stones cleaned and restored, erecting the sign as a memorial. And then former town historian Ruth Kiwanka applied to have the site added to the national and state historic registries. We owe a debt of gratitude to Hollis and to Warren and to Ruth, and Hollis and Warren are with us here. Raise your hands. We owe a debt of gratitude to them. And to all the volunteers who helped them. We are so incredibly blessed to have a site like this, and to have it be as beautiful as it is, a place where we can come and honor our ancestors. Very few communities are lucky enough to have a historic ground like this still in existence and recognized and cared for. So, who are these people who are buried here? The 15 remaining headstones give us just the tiniest glimpse into the lives of Kinderhook's black community. And please keep in mind that these headstones are not in their original position. They were moved and rearranged here in this central area to make maintenance easier. And it's believed that probably the graves themselves run perpendicular to the way the way the headstones are laid out. So they're probably this way. Most of the stones that we see today are for children. Those are the ones that have survived. We have Harriet A. and Rachel Burgett, the infant daughters of Peter and Harriet Burgett. Peter was my own third great-grandfather. He was born here into slavery in 1811, as most likely were each of his 3 wives. Harriet was the first. In 1851, he was a lay minister and founding member of the Bethel AME Church here in Kinderhook, which is over on Sunset. If any of you want to take a walk over there, it's still there. It's a house now, so don't bother. He himself is buried in Prospect Hill Cemetery up in Valatia, but we don't know where Harriet is buried, and it may very well be that she is here with her children. There's Isabel Leggett, who's a large stone in the back there. She died in 1854 at the age of 77. In her later life, she lived with the Augustus Wynkoop family over on Church Street. And it's thought that she may have been a midwife or something like that, because her stone reads, quote, "The journey of the just is blessed." It's a tribute of respect erected by the ladies of Kinderhook. There are 3 children of Joseph and Sarah Collins, 2 Springsteen children, Francis and Sylvestes, Samuel Prine, Charles Van Valkenburg, Jacob Toby. But what of the other hundreds of people interred here? We don't know, and we'll likely never know who they were. All of these people, men, women, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, enslaved and free, they're all lost to us. The only remaining proof of their existence is with their descendants. Only within ourselves and our imaginations did these people continue to exist. These are our ancestors, and we are, as the saying goes, their wildest dreams. So I'd like to leave you with a poem. It's from a collection called Bone Yarn. It's written by David Mills, and he was inspired by the African burial ground down in Lower Manhattan, which is the oldest African burial ground in the country. The piece I'm going to share with you is called Talking to the Bones, and it's part of a series that's set up as a conversation between the poet himself and the people interred in that cemetery. And I just want to let you know that the first line of the poem refers to the West African tradition of burying people with their heads facing to the west and to the setting sun. So this is Talking to the Bones. I'll wait for the car to pass. Why bury the pate facing west? Then the setting sun only nicks the sockets. That first snow, white tears drifting from the whites of the sky's puffy eyes. What type of toil did you do? Work until the bones were wrinkled by song. Why the halfpence on your eyes? Think full moon, throb of a distant drum that once played you. What was it like to have graves without names? Come again? Thank you.